Some arguments are not hard because you are bad at explaining yourself. They are hard because the finish line keeps moving. You answer the first point, then suddenly that was not the real point. You bring the example they asked for. Now the example is too small. You explain what you meant. Now the problem is your tone. And after a few rounds, you are not even talking about the original issue anymore. You are just standing there, trying to prove you are reasonable to someone who keeps changing what reasonable means. That is the part that wears people down. Not the disagreement. The chase. Picture this. Someone says, "You never listen." So you pause. You try not to react too fast. You ask, "What did I miss?" They say, "Last week, when I told you about the dinner." You remember that conversation. You remember changing plans because of it. So you say, "I did listen. I moved the appointment so we could go." For 1 second, it looks like the point is answered. Then the finish line moves. That is not the point. You only did it because I got upset. Now the claim is different. It is not "you never listen." It is "your reason for listening was wrong." So you try to answer that. You say, "I was trying to help." And it moves again. If you were really trying to help, I would not have had to explain it. Now, you are not defending what happened. You are defending whether your effort counts. That pattern has a name. It is called moving the goalposts. The phrase sounds simple, but in real conversations, it can be hard to catch, because it usually does not happen as one big obvious switch. It happens in small steps. First, they ask for an example. Then the example is not enough. Then they ask for proof. Then the proof is not the point. Then they ask why you reacted that way. Then your reaction becomes the whole conversation. Each step is close enough to the last one that you keep following it. That is why it works. It keeps you busy. You keep thinking, if I can just explain this better, maybe it will finally land. But the problem is not always your explanation. Sometimes the problem is that there is no stable finish line. There is a big difference between a hard conversation and a moving goalpost conversation. In a hard conversation, the issue stays visible. Someone says, "I felt ignored when you looked at your phone during dinner." You can talk about that. Maybe you were distracted. Maybe there was an emergency. Maybe you apologize. Maybe you agree not to keep your phone on the table next time. It might still be uncomfortable, but the issue is standing still. You both know what you are talking about. In a moving goalpost conversation, the issue keeps changing after you respond. You answer the phone point. Now, it is about your attitude. You answer the attitude point. Now, it is about your past. You answer the past point. Now it is about how you are always like this. At that point, the conversation is not trying to understand one moment. It is keeping you in defense mode. And defense mode is exhausting because you never get to land. There are 3 signs to watch for. The first sign is when proof suddenly stops counting. They ask, "When did I say that?" You show the text. Then they say, "That is not what I meant." Sometimes that is fair. People misspeak. People type things badly. Context matters. But if every piece of evidence gets dismissed the second it appears, notice the shift. The text counted when they thought you did not have it. It stopped counting when you did. That does not mean you should turn every conversation into a courtroom. It means you should notice when the standard changes right after you meet it. The second sign is when the request gets bigger after you satisfy it. They say, "I just want an apology." So you apologize. Then they say, "An apology does not fix anything." You ask, "What would help?" Now they say, "If you cared, you would already know." That is not a clear request anymore. That is a test with no answer key. You can spend all night trying to guess the right response, and the target can still move. Too little emotion means you do not care. Too much emotion means you are making it about yourself. Asking for clarity means you are being difficult. Trying to solve it means you are rushing them. Now, every move is wrong before you make it. The third sign is when one issue turns into a character trial. You start with one specific moment. 10 minutes later, you are defending whether you are selfish, careless, dramatic, cold, defensive, or impossible. That shift matters. Specific problems can be solved. Character verdicts can only be denied. And when you are busy denying them, the original issue disappears. That is why moving the goalposts can make you doubt yourself. Your brain expects conversations to have a point. So when the point keeps changing, you assume you missed something. You replay the conversation. You think, maybe I answered the wrong part. Then, maybe I sounded too defensive. West. Then, maybe I am the problem. And sometimes, yes, you might have something to own. Blind spot is not about pretending you are never wrong. It is not about labeling every uncomfortable conversation as manipulation. If someone gives you a specific issue and the issue stays specific, that may be repair. That may be accountability. That may be a hard conversation you actually need to have. But owning your part is different from chasing a standard that keeps changing. The way out is not to explain faster. It is to slow the conversation down and hold one claim still. One useful line is, I can answer one claim at a time. Which specific point are we talking about right now? If they say you never listen, bring it back. Are we talking about last week at dinner, or are we talking about a larger pattern? If they say, that is not the point, ask, what is the point you want me to respond to? If they shift again, name the shift calmly. We started with one issue, and now we are on a different one. I am willing to talk about either, but not all of them at once. That kind of line does two things. It does not accuse them of manipulating you, and it does not let the conversation turn into fog. It puts the topic back on the table. One claim, one example, one next step. That is usually where you find out what kind of conversation you are actually in. If someone wants repair, specificity helps. They may still be upset. They may still need time, but a specific point gives both people something real to work with. If someone wants control, specificity gets in the way, because a specific point can be answered. A moving standard cannot. So if the finish line keeps moving, stop sprinting after it. Pause. Name the exact issue. Ask what would count as a fair answer. And if the answer changes every time you get close, that is information. You may not be in a conversation about repair. You may be in a conversation designed to keep you chasing. Clarity does not always mean you win the argument. Sometimes clarity means you finally stop running.